getting bombed and Superman helps them.
That guy's such
I mean, even if it isn't about that, like clearly they knew that was going to be the correlation.
If you feel upset that Superman is saving innocent people from bombs, I think there's something deeply wrong with your culture.
Oh, yeah.
So,
this meeting is being recorded.
Okay, awesome. And then we'll probably start like a minute after the hour, so it's just to like allow people to join the webinar as well. Let's see here. And then Sadia, does Zoom save local recordings?
So I'm saving this one to the cloud. I can also save it to my computer. Is that what you mean?
Like our individual screens will Zoom save just one. Will it just save this video, or will it also save the individual screens of each speaker?
I'm not sure I understand. Like,
okay, no, it's fine. I think Zoom is meant more conference. Like I use StreamYard, and it's able to actually save like the local recording for every screen, so you get just better footage versus the internet one. But I don't think that's the case on Zoom, so never mind.
Okay.
I was just thinking about maybe trying to turn some of these into shorts or something, but we'll see.
Yeah, we're trying to do that as well, actually. And we usually do use
turn them into shorts.
Yeah. So are you saying StreamYard would be better for that? Because we do use
absolutely
for to stream to our other sources like YouTube, X.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, we use StreamYard.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, 100%. Let's moving forward. We should talk about that. StreamYard's good because then aside, if the internet is spotty and somebody freezes, then with StreamYard, it'll also on each individual computer save their local recording and then upload it. So you get much more better footage, and then it's easier to just edit, make shorts and everything, which I'm pretty good at.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah. We're streaming now using StreamYard as well, so you'll be able to have access to that. We can share the recording.
Okay, awesome. Water. Okay. So we have 16 participants in. We're going to be letting we're going to start in a few minutes, guys, just to allow more people to join. Hope everybody's doing well. We have some really awesome speakers today that I think you guys are going to love hearing. So this is going to be a lot of fun. Feel free to use the chat. We're going to be using the Q&A pretty frequently in this webinar. Hey, Oisin, Hope you're doing well. Thanks for messaging in the chat. Appreciate it. Alrighty. Alrighty, and we'll start in just one more minute. All right, wonderful. We'll just get going. Hey guys, hope you're doing well. We have some awesome speakers today in this webinar, which is going to be all focused on Palestine in film and media. And we're going to be having a conversation today with the founders of Watermelon Pictures. So the new film label behind powerful works like the Encampments, we're going to be exploring how cinema shapes the narratives of Palestine, what gets told, what goes unheard, and discuss the practical strategies of supporting Palestinian storytelling in global media. I think this is going to be a really awesome conversation today. Please, just some housekeeping items. Please make sure to feel free to use the chat as frequently as you'd like. We're going to be answering some questions in the chat as well. So if you find anything interesting that either of these awesome speakers share, feel free to just toss it in there. I'll try to get through as many of them as we can. And we're going to be having a dedicated Q&A section as well today in this webinar. So we have two great founders today. They're brothers. We have Badie and Hamza Badie. They're the founders of Watermelon Pictures. They have great stories about how Watermelon Pictures came to be. So I'm really excited to speak with them today. Thanks for joining, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Wally.
Thank you. So we're just going to get right into it. Of course, everybody knows, film matters because it allows people, especially those that typically go unnoticed and unheard, to share their story. And we have seen recently, especially since October 7th, how the narrative, how influential the narrative is and how it changes people's perception of what of events that happen and what gets told and what gets heard. And especially nowadays in America, in an environment where the Palestinian narrative isn't heard as much, it's very important that we have movies and we have cinema that allows their stories to be told, so the world sees things from a different perspective, sometimes from a more honest perspective. So we're going to start off by just allowing each of these founders sharing their personal story, their origin story of Watermelon Pictures and how things came to be, some of the great work that they're each individually working on. We're going to start off with Badie. Each speaker is going to get about 6 minutes to share their origin story, their career, and how they got to Watermelon Pictures. So, Badie, if you'd like to share a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the introduction, Wally. And Entrepreneurship Palestine, we're very proud to be asked to be on this webinar. Hopefully we could bring something to value. So real quickly, yeah. So before I talk about me, I'd like to actually go back to kind of some of our history and how kind of things started here. My grandfather actually came to America on a boat through Ellis Island in 1935. And my father and uncle were both born in the United States. And my uncle happened to be a really big film buff, and he even in college he was a big James Bond fan, and his local college, he was able, this was in the early 80s, or sorry, late 70s, he was able to get the school to pay for a helicopter to do an action scene of a film. So my uncle had, with his kind of vision and love of film, decided that he wanted to start a distribution company. And early on, there was a challenge on whether they should start a distribution company or a video store, and he went just the distribution route. Again, he had great vision, was ahead of his time. Him and my father started the company in 1976, bicycling film reels. They would rent film reels from the major studios and rent them to schools, nursing homes, and whatnot. Then they started acquiring the rights for home video distribution on Digibeta, then VHS, then DVD, and then it grew to digital, foreign licensing, ancillary. We talked about home video, theatrical kind of television, so full global distribution company. So we've been doing this for about 50 years, and we acquired some of the rights to classic television programs like The Honeymooners, The Beatles, A Hard Day's Night, and Help were some of the titles. We released the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original. So we always kind of had our paws into film, and Hamza and I specifically, as kids, we worked since we were really young summers, whether it was boxing up VHS tapes into collector's boxes or quality checking DVDs, so on and so forth. And just to go a little bit into my personal history, I was active in my university. I actually was a founder of the Students for Justice in Palestine at DePaul University. So activism was kind of always in our blood and something that we always cherished. And then obviously, taking the business from more of a home video to digital and whatnot, Hamza and I oversaw that growth. Fast forward to, October, actually even a little bit before October 7th, Hamza and I were discussing that there is a lack of representation of our culture, even if it's for our own audience. We looked at it. I have 4 children, Hamza has 4 children, and we're just looking at the content that we grew up with. It doesn't really exist anymore for our children. So we wanted to start looking into content that's commercial and mainstream, but yet appeals to us and our culture and whatnot. So we were talking about this, and then all this kind of got put on hold once October 7th happened. After everything happened, we looked to ourselves. We're actually also involved in a local mosque. We've been very politically active in the area here, really trying to support the right politicians who are supporting us and whatnot. And then we came to the realization that we might be the only Arab Muslim North American distribution company, right, that's led by us. So we have a machine that's been running for about 50 years. How could we leverage this machine and really help the movement? So we started reaching out to a lot of people on social media, a lot of different projects, and we came to the quick realization that none of these projects had any North American distribution. So this is something that we can do, and it's our bread and butter. It's something we were born into this. So we decided to start acquiring the rights to a lot of these different projects, and already in the last year and a half or so, we've acquired over 100 titles that reflect some of these films that we're discussing. So that's kind of where we were at with the label, and yeah, no, it's Hamza. Do you want to add something to? You want to continue?
No, I think you said it. I mean, yeah, it's very rare for a Palestinian kid in the 70s to be so invested in film, and so we, it's really like we're standing on the shoulders of my uncle and my father. My father brought in a lot of the business savvy, and then for I think for me and Badie, it was obviously we're seeing these images on our phone, and it was obviously the genocide, but not only that, the ensuing debate that occurred after, is it justified? And you just you wonder, how can people be debating whether or not these images that we're seeing are justified? And so what is it that allows that debate to ensue? It's dehumanization, it's erasure. If we were present, and obviously film is just one thing, but if we were present on screen, if we weren't misrepresented as well when we are present, then this debate wouldn't be able to occur. And maybe in the genocide wouldn't be able to occur. If you know Palestinians and you see how we are, then so for us it was like, obviously it's battling dehumanization, it's battling underrepresentation, misrepresentation, villainization, and cultural
and
erasure.
just to add, Hamza. So when we started, we were actually very nervous that there would be like some fallback, and there would be some censorship, or specifically from Zionists or whatnot, to shut us down. One of our first titles that we acquired was Israelism, which is very controversial. So we were originally going to put some of these titles under our own label, and then we were concerned that this would kind of shut the whole thing down. But again, as we started looking into creating a new label, having more conversations, we realized that the need is just so blatant for this label. So we spent quite a bit of time coming up with the proper name of the label, and which Watermelon Pictures. Watermelon, obviously is a symbol for the movement, and its whole purpose and reason why it existed in the first place was to kind of, again, be a sign of the resistance, but yet under the radar a little bit. And that's kind of what we were going for when we were coming up with the concept. We worked with a really great company. We really got our vision, our brand, our mission, all this down. We've even the design of the logo with the seed marks, it represents all these seeds sitting in an auditorium, and all of these seeds. The idea is that we're all of us are in diaspora, and wherever we were sent, we're going to sprout, and we have been sprouting. So now it's our time as diaspora generation, the next generation. Wherever we're at, we need to come together to really have a huge impact. So again, there was a lot of thought put into all of this. We ended up launching. It's been, since we launched, the most beautiful part of everything has been the support we've got from community. We are a distribution and production label, but we're really driven by the movement. And again, it's a passion project for everyone who's involved. And again, it's not a little company that's running this, it's really all of us collectively. And I think that's a beautiful thing, is it's much bigger than anything. So we've been able to connect in the last year and a half with some of the best minds in the world across the globe, whether being executives at Disney who are engulfed in the movement, Amazon, Netflix, marketing agencies from around the world, investors, wealth funds. It's been really uncanny, the support that we've been getting. And I think for us, one thing we realized is we've never been more optimistic. It's terrible. It's a tragedy what's happening to our brothers and sisters in Gaza. But if anything comes out of it, it was a wake-up call that we need to really unite and bring our resources together to change the world and stop the madness. And what's happening in Gaza is just a microcosm of what's happening around the world and other places as well. And we need to, start with, obviously, our North Star is Palestine, specifically to Hamza and I, we're Palestinian, but yet these other movements are just as important. And once we start allying with these other movements and we start connecting the dots or connecting the seeds, we can really have that true change. And it's happening. How fast we are able to work together is how fast the change will happen. So as dire as the situation is, I feel more optimistic now than I ever have. And everyone just needs to use whatever platform they have. God has blessed us with this distribution company. Our job is to use it to help serve the greater good. And that's what we truly think we're doing. So
I appreciate that. Thanks so much for sharing that and the mission and why Watermelon Pictures came to be. I'd love to touch a little bit more about the logistics of how you go from vision and idea to what it is today. So if you can kind of share a bit about that, especially because we have so many entrepreneurs in the chat, and I'm sure they have great ideas and missions for wanting to contribute and help Palestine and help the cause and help other causes as well. So how did you go from having this idea in your head of what you envisioned to the actual steps that you needed to form the company? What was kind of your outline, and how did you even know to go about that?
does anyone take it?
Yeah, I mean, again, like I think Badie touched on, it was initially like just pure philanthropy and supporting the creative community. And there was a film called Walled Off, which was directed by Vinar Fuso, that Anwar Hadid, co-produced. And then again, another important film. We feel Israelism is like a tool for deconstructing and deflating Zionism. And so when we saw these, we're seeing kind of like the grassroots type distribution that just isn't necessarily, I think Israelism did kind of have some success just via virality and great social media, but, able to get it on mainstream platforms where the people that need to see it can see it. And so, initially it started as just outreach, philanthropy. Then we did realize there is a label, there's more there. There's a label there. And so after we launched, we had this weekend, session of, like 2 9-hour, 10-hour days or whatever, and just kind of laying out the 1 year, 3 year, 5 year goals. And I have to say, like, we've been really, it's been like 24/7 since the genocide began. And, we're seeing successes. We've hit our 5 year goals within the first year, and now we're kind of like setting new goals. And we have we see a lot of potential in where the label can go, and expand and be bigger and more commercial, and really kind of just serve the community, serve the creative community, serve the narrative. And so, we're just like, opportunities have, honestly, I think by the grace of God, they've presented themselves. Every week we're like having new ideas, new opportunities come to us. And we also, I'll say, is we haven't cut any corners. Like, we're supporting the mission all the way through. We haven't taken any kind of like outside financing or anything like that. So it's been really just more like, again, our existing company just kind of supporting this new endeavor, but we do see potential for growth.
Yeah, I could add, to something Hamza said. So the one thing we always realize where our true kind of value to this whole movement is in distribution. As I mentioned before, we're the only ones in North America that really are supporting this cause as a distributor. There's a lot of production companies, there's a lot of projects, but in terms of getting it out, amplifying it, getting it through the system, we're the only ones that kind of bring that to the table. So we always know this is our bread and butter, and we always want to stay true to that. But for us, I could tell you when we started and where we're at, because we're a team that can move very quickly. We're blessed to be able to be flexible and adjust as we need to. Just to talk about bigger picture and what our current focuses are on from a project standpoint. I mean, first, obviously, there's these projects like Encampments from ground zero. There are very impactful projects that are, speaking to the cause. These need to be out there and they need to be amplified, and we're working on that. Some of the challenges with some of these projects are it's really hard to work outside of our echo chamber. Sometimes we're only speaking to the people within our own, cause. It needs to be amplified further and beyond that, which we're trying. But some of these films, by the nature of their controversy or perceived controversy, it's hard to get it to that level. The next phase of what we're trying to do is really developing more commercial films that humanize who we are as a people, because through film there's been a strong there's propaganda against us to really dehumanize who we are. The brown terrorist of the film, or the person that's not human, or whatever it might be. So for us, we really have to change this perception, and it's by making commercial films where the superhero happens to be an Arab or a Muslim, or a comedy where you get to learn a little bit about a family that happens to be from the same culture. So, but the true strength of this is the reach. If they're commercial films, the reach is much further. A great example of this is Mo Show or Rami Show. Again, these are more commercial and can hit beyond our audience. And the idea is, as more people see us in normal roles, that again, some of the stigma of what's been painted about us have changed, right? And then the bigger goal, I think, long term is we just see, we see Hollywood struggling. We see, studios shedding so many employees. Hollywood it's hurting, and I think the model of what existed and the way it was set up is no longer necessarily the case. Before, why this, specifically Hollywood, North America was such an important territory was because North America was one of the few territories that had access to, film, to theaters, had access to VHS TVs. Now every single person in the world essentially has a phone in their hand almost. So the idea is media is now changing where it's going, and the global south is the future. And I think with what we're trying to build, it's really authentic storytelling from parts of the world that has been completely neglected, rich of history, specifically from the Arab world. Arabs are known to be rich storytellers with amazing stories. In the West here, IP is such a challenge because there's a lack of stories, there's a lack of history. In fact, we spoke to someone at Disney who told us they're actually they actually write books. They have someone they pay to write a book, then they publish it, then they buy 20,000 copies, make it a New York bestseller, option that same book that they wrote to make a film about it. So they're manufacturing IP because they're running out of ideas. And with us, there's probably half the people in this chat can probably, specifically if they're from, the Palestine region or they probably have stories that warrant a film in itself. So again, we're so rich with stories and these aren't being taken advantage of. And that's just that small part of the world. Now you start talking about Africa, Asia. So I truly believe the future is in the global south, and it starts with authentic storytelling. And I think that with Watermelon, we hope to be a beacon of this, at least from a strategic standpoint and a higher vision purpose. So those are kind of the three bigger lanes that we're looking into: short, medium, and long.
That's wonderful. And you mentioned some of your flagship projects already, the Encampments, Israelism. If you could just touch a little bit more on some of the great content you've been working on recently and struggles that you've encountered as you've been going along those projects.
Yeah. So, actually prior to the Encampments, we had From Ground Zero, which is a film that we're very proud of. We didn't produce it, but I think we did a pretty good job getting it out to the world. So we attached Michael Moore as a executive producer. It was shortlisted for an Academy Award. It didn't get the nomination, obviously, but it's one that really just kind of brings the voices from Gaza directly. So there's 22 filmmakers from Gaza, and there was pushback on that film a little bit. I wouldn't say it was somewhat mild, and it came from heavily Zionist organizations. The Encampments was definitely much trickier. I think because of the villainization of the student protest movement and anti-Semitism, cinemas and journalists were a lot more reluctant to cover the film, and I think there potentially could have been a bigger release there. But I think we really did as much as we could with it, and it played in 165 different cinemas and across the nation. But yeah, there was quite an effort. Email spam campaigns. The cinema that we opened in New York was vandalized prior to our opening, and just a lot of intimidation, factors. But I have to say, for the most part, the cinemas, that's part of what we bring, is we have these long relationships with these exhibitors that they trust us, and so we're not releasing anything that we wouldn't stand behind or anyone wouldn't stand behind. And then just looking forward, we did The Teacher, which is just a great dramatic feature, not a documentary, and I think just really succeeds as entertainment. I definitely want to plug To a Land Unknown because it opened on Friday, and it's just receiving flawless reviews. It's like I think 99% on Rotten Tomatoes. Just like really succeeds as cinema. in general. Not a heavily political film. It's just about two Palestinian refugees in Greece and kind of, their story. And it's actually it's a a dramatic thriller. It's a drug dealer. They resort to dealing drugs, and so it's just an entertaining film, really great film. And then on the horizon we have, I think, films that are just much larger scale that we're really excited to be bringing. You'll be seeing those over the next 6 to 8 months or so, and definitely elevated as far as scale and quality. So very excited to share that with everybody.
Yeah, and Hamza, if I could just add to the Encampments, I'm not sure if you mentioned this, but we were suppressed where Meta and Google wouldn't do ads for us. They first said because they're political campaign ads, and we're like, they're not campaign ads. Then they came back and said it's discriminatory. So it just gives you an idea of, again, we did a whole theatrical campaign without doing ads because it was suppressed. Our LinkedIn page was taken down because of the trailer, which, again, if you've seen Encampments, it's really the opposite of hate. It's showing love. One thing I did want to bring a little bit more attention to is From Ground Zero, which also had amazing IMDb, I think, reviews, and it was certified fresh as well. But there was a positive. It was considered a positive article, but this is just where the thinking is from a liberal Zionist outlet that actually said it's interesting. This film claims not to be political, but the fact that it's humanizing Palestinians in itself is political. Mm-hmm. And I remember the team when some of the people who weren't too savvy to understand the nuances of everything, they said, "Oh, this is a great article. It's positive." I'm like, "Did you read the sentence in the middle?" So these are the kind of language and the things that are being said even out loud. And I truly believe this is the person who wrote it. This is their belief. But the fact is that how could somebody actually say that where it's political to humanize a Palestinian? So again, these are some of the challenges that we're dealing with. When we see the suppression, I think it actually motivates us more because we are having impact, right? If we were left alone, I think it would be, okay, they're not going anywhere. But the fact that the more projects that we're coming out with, the more kind of suppression we're seeing. But it seems we kind of always know how to circumvent some of these attacks, and there's opportunities to bring more people in because of them as well. So we're in an interesting place right now, to say the least.
Absolutely. And we have a question in the chat that touches on that as well from Eva. Have you faced any criticism or censorship, and how have you dealt with it? How are you navigating the wider film industry, which is overwhelmingly pro-Zionist?
Yeah. Can I start with this?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So what's interesting is what we're seeing is, which is a beautiful thing. I've talked about some of those suppression things just ahead, but to give you an example is Variety, who's kind of known to be a very, historically pretty Zionist, mainstream, outlet. We actually had a young writer wrote a nice, beautiful write-up of kind of watermelon picture what we're doing, and specifically Hamza and I, that was very, very positive. This person happened to be a fan of, some of the films we're working on and whatever. We're seeing a generational shift where that next generation are coming in to become writers in these places, and they're very pro-Palestine, and they're very pro-information. They're getting their information from media outlets outside of the legacy and traditional outlets that we're accustomed to. And I think with this shift, there's also the propaganda isn't hitting this generation as hard. Another example is we know someone at MSNBC, which kind of said, the legacy channel itself is pretty pro-Zionist, and they have a following, but the digital side of this outlet happens to have way more reach, way more of a following, and they happen to be very pro-Palestine. So again, I think that we're seeing this generational shift, which is very inspiring, and I think it's kind of opening the door for a lot of what we're doing.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. And when it comes to the distribution side of things, you've already touched on it. These relationships, it seems that you've had some of them before since you've been in the industry for a while. Did you have to nurture new relationships with Watermelon Pictures, and how did you go about that?
I wouldn't necessarily say new relationships, but it's definitely been, interesting because, again, we've been doing it, not us personally, 50, but the business has been, around for 50 years, and my brother and I somewhere between 15 and 20. And yeah, dealing with the new, dramatics has definitely been, something that we're not used to. But we have a really strong team. We're very like diligent, and we discuss what is our tone, what is our messaging. Sometimes our tone on social media doesn't necessarily match our tone to the industry. We have to be obviously very tactical within the industry. But I will say also, like, something you touched on, Wally, the industry at the highest level might be very, Zionist, but actually, I think even like in the middle and a lot of at the executive level, there's a lot of support there, and I think, you know, even if a network or a studio is owned and controlled by Zionists, they're even losing control of their own, infrastructure because of, not everybody shares their political alignment. I mean, we were talking about it before we jumped on, and even I haven't seen it yet, but even Superman, it's like this narrative is probably not something that I don't know, like a Universal, or that maybe they're like, this isn't the way we would have done it, but maybe the director or the producer or whoever is anti-Zionist. And we are having a lot of people come to us from various studios, HBO Max, and like Badie said, Disney, places you wouldn't expect, saying, hey, how can we help you? Hulu, so it's actually, we're actually seeing that there's opportunity because people are appreciative of our, courage and honesty. And we're kind of like, hey, if no other distributors will take your film because they're afraid or spineless or whatever, we're kind of selling ourselves as like the fearless distributor that will do that. So yeah, but again, it's pretty much a daily basis that we're dealing with something that we have to figure out how to navigate in the PR world. It's every day and it's tricky, but we're doing our best.
Absolutely. And when it comes to you touched on distribution already, how have you been leveraging marketing for Watermelon Pictures? Do you rely solely on the distribution of the films, or have you been using social media at all to expand your reach of Watermelon Pictures to get more publicity around it?
Yeah, do you want to go with it or you want me to?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, definitely. Social media is a huge, that's kind of where we're most active. Initially we did very little advertising. We are doing a little bit now. We have, there's a really great influencer network that's very supportive of us, that want to see us succeed. And yeah, I think we're seeing that there's a strong appetite for principled content. And so that's also helping us. I mean, almost like some of these very politically charged films are actually the ones that are performing the best for us, like an Encampments, like a Israelism. So yeah, it's but yeah, we're marketing across all. We have a whole staff here that is marketing, and part of part of selling a film is the most important aspects are title, trailer, and poster. And so just making sure our assets are great is super important as well.
I think
Absolutely.
one thing, just to jump on what Hamza said, sorry, Wally, but I think we're learning that there's a different model of marketing even, and I think we've also seen this with Sahran and his campaign, but for us, it's almost very grassroots marketing level where we're able to, specifically these, more politically charged stuff, where we know where some of the communities are, we know how to activate them, and do it in a very effective, efficient way. So encampments, we activated all these universities, all these students for justice in Palestine, all these other organizations working on it. From ground zero, we hit a lot of different Arab communities, religious communities. We worked with religious organizations, and again, very targeted marketing where it yielded a very good result.
Absolutely. And you touched on how some of the most politically charged films have actually been some of the best performing for you guys. That's a question I wanted to ask, because at the end of the day, Watermelon Pictures, in order to continue running, it has to, of course, consider the financial aspect, which is part of owning a business. So how do you balance the commercial viability of the content you put out with its political urgency?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Like, people really are craving this type of content. I think a lot of people are seeing through the propaganda, but we're very we're very much understanding that the film has to entertain first and foremost, and it's something that we're preaching very heavily to our creative community. There's a lot of documentaries that come through the door, a lot of very heavy a lot of doctors in Gaza pitches and things like that, and they are important, but ultimately, it has to succeed first as cinema, and also, and it's not a matter of self-censorship or anything, but the most entertaining and really just best films are going to have the most political impact, because they really go hand in hand. And something that we came up with recently that we haven't really talked about publicly, but we were basically an acronym that we use is it's the RIPE method. The things that we look for in a film: representation, impact, popular appeal, and earnings potential. And if you could check all these boxes, then you might have a winner on your hands. So those are the things that we're looking for when we're either distributing a film or potentially financing a film.
And Wally, just to add to what Hamza said, these things have to be sustainable. Where we could ask philanthropists or even ourselves put in so much for so long. If we want to be sustainable and continue these projects, we really got to make sure that the budgets that are going into these projects can warrant it from the monetization standpoint. And that's the challenge. One thing we're always challenging the filmmakers, because again, filmmakers are trying to make a beautiful piece of art, which is great, but the challenge is, from our sake, is the first question we ask is, who is our audience for this project? And it's almost that we're challenging people to work backwards. If we're trying to really appeal to a Western audience, again, a far-reaching film, you really need to understand how to, what makes that audience respond to this film. I could tell you any foreign language film, whether it's Arabic or any other language in the States right now, it is a huge challenge. People are not watching foreign films, unfortunately. So we need to understand how we can twist and make things work and whatnot. So it's always the first thing, again, we should think about is, who do we want to watch this film, and are we able to connect the film with the audience?
Absolutely. And there's so many questions in the chat, guys. I wanted to leave all these chat questions toward the end because they are more action-oriented questions. So I'm going to get to those in 2 minutes. I have one personal question I wanted to ask, and also just for everybody in the chat and watching this webinar to really understand. So is your business model more focused then on having the production reach out to you and you as a distributor get the content out? Or is it a mix of both where you're also producing? What's the majority of your business model look like?
Hamza, you're muted.
Sorry, I muted so I could type. We're able to take a film from ideation all the way through exhibition now with Watermelon Plus. So we even have the streaming component. So that said, though, there are a lot of producers. There's a lot of creatives out there. We really do realize that our carrot is in distribution. That's an area where there's nobody else exists to kind of get the films out. But if we feel extremely passionate about a project, we will come on early and in the production phase. It's just I would say a little bit fewer and far between. Whereas distribution, we're yeah, much more willing to take them on. And even on the distribution side, every film has its own strategy. I mean, there's basically films that will take on and do a full-blown theatrical campaign. There's films that will do a VOD only release, and then there's films that we want to be supportive and we'll put it on Watermelon Plus. But we can't give like every film obviously the same campaign. So yeah, we're very flexible. We take it title by title.
Absolutely. Appreciate that. And there's some great questions in the chat. These seem to be more action oriented, so I wanted to save them towards the end, which we'll go ahead and do right now. So first one comes from an anonymous attendee. Does content on Watermelon Plus depend on location? I was trying to buy and stream The Teacher and it was not available. I am based in Germany.
Yeah. Yep, it does. Yeah, unfortunately. So, our rights are, they vary on a per project basis. So for The Teacher, I believe we have North America, UK, Ireland. I'm not sure if we have Australia, New Zealand, but basically for The Teacher specifically, we have English speaking rights. So yeah, we don't have Germany, unfortunately, for that film, and it does vary title by title.
Wonderful. And thank you for sharing that. Hind Nasid writes, would you consider starting an audiobook app?
We've been talking about potentially a family section on Watermelon Plus. And potentially part of that could be like these, not necessarily audiobooks, because our focus is more on the film side, but maybe these kind of more like, I forgot what they're called, but like the video books where you're seeing the book on screen and it's flipping, maybe there's some animation. But yeah, literature isn't really our area of expertise. I mean, maybe it would be an area we could expand to in the future.
Definitely. And Renee Hanley writes, how would you suggest filmmakers in Gaza going through the genocide right now go about in developing their work with the limited resources available?
So I mean, a great example of this was From Ground Zero, which was 22 shorts by all the filmmakers who were on the ground after the genocide in Gaza, with very, very limited resources. But if there's anything about the people of Gaza, their resilience is unlike anything else in the world. I've spoken with someone who came from Gaza, and they explained to us how they're able to steal the cellular waves for their phones. Like with their phones, they're able to steal waves and get service and signal. And it was beyond how they're able to filter water from just whatever they have. So they're resilient people. They're able to do stuff we can't imagine. I'm not in a place to be able to tell them anything, because I don't know how we would handle the situation. But we are working with some filmmakers in Gaza which are still producing content, and it's very impressive given what's going on.
Absolutely. And I think especially with social media, we're seeing a lot of people in Gaza leveraging social media, which is one of the most potent methods of communication nowadays as well. So an anonymous attendee writes, will Watermelon Pictures be available on YouTube for subscribers? I would love to view on flat screen versus a personal device.
So Watermelon Plus is currently on iOS, Android, Google Chromecast, Fire TV, Roku. I know I'm missing some. I think there's 6. Apple TV, and I think I said 6 of them. But so there are options so that you're not watching on your phone. But we are looking to expand. I think Samsung is our next one that we would expand to. So we're kind of just going down, the order of the most users to the least. Eventually, we want to be on every. We are, you're able to view us on many platforms, but we want to be on every platform eventually.
Yeah, and to the YouTube question, I mean, we're also building out a different YouTube strategy altogether, which is a little different focus on different type of content. But we do see the future is in that. Like right now, it is YouTube. Again, just speaking personally, I have four children, and all of them, they're not watching Netflix, they're not watching Max, they're not watching Amazon. They're watching their favorite influencer drop content daily, and that's where we see the next generation really taking absorbing their content. So we definitely know that that's where we need to be, and we're working on a strategy for that.
Definitely, yeah. I know the last two movies I actually rented were both I rented them both from YouTube, so it seems like it's a growing platform, at least for myself. Osen Vink writes, seems like we kind of touched on it already, but this is more specific. What is your advice for creating an independent documentary in collaboration with a creator currently based in Gaza? Ahmed Sarsour, a Palestinian Sudanese poet, was displaced by the Sudanese civil war and became trapped in Gaza after October 7th. We're currently scripting and compiling mobile footage documenting Ahmed's life and trying to upscale it using DaVinci Resolve.
Yeah, I think on the more technical side, we really rely on like the editors and the director. As far as like kind of more overview, it's really a matter of, from our perspective, and we're biased, keep distribution in mind when you're producing a film. Think about marketability and what is the hook. How am I going to get people to watch the film? Something that we've been telling people is also, you even have to consider that our community is seeing so much on social media that sometimes when they go watch a film, they don't necessarily want to watch something that's going to be overly devastating. I think a lot of times they want hope, they want something uplifting, they want entertainment, they want to laugh. So all of these things that you have to consider is like getting people in the seats. And for us, sometimes when we're hearing a pitch, it's sometimes as simple as can you pitch this film in like 1 or 2 lines? And if you have to kind of like go into this long explanation of like what the film is and how you're going to get people to watch it, that's a sign that it's going to be hard to pitch to the public to watch the film. Whereas if it's like a one-liner, and people are just like, oh wow, that sounds awesome, then it's probably a good sign that you're on the right track.
Absolutely. Alston Sphere writes, and I see another person asked the same question, similar, Rudineya Elbow. Are there any opportunities for creating an internship program with Watermelon Pictures plus streaming platform, technical and non-technical? If so, I'd love to connect. I've been working on expanding STEM internships in Palestine. Alongside that, Rudaina writes, do you welcome volunteer help? And if so, specific areas you would appreciate the help? Thank you.
We haven't taken any volunteers on. Everybody that is with us is paid. It's something that we can consider and talk about. It's not something that we've ever done. We feel like people are going to put their time in, they should be compensated. But actually, we've been talking to orgs from this group, from Entrepreneurs for Palestine, that are also engaging with people in Palestine, because nothing would bring us more joy than like employing people out of Palestine. It would be a great pleasure to, for our salaries to go there as opposed to anywhere else. So yeah, I love the idea, and we'd be open to it.
And as we have needs, we do post job openings and stuff constantly. And I would just say stay tuned for that. We drop them on LinkedIn, through our newsletter and some other things. So yeah, if people are interested, if there's something that opens up, again, you can always, we'll keep everyone kind of privy of positions that open.
Awesome. And Taika, it seems like I already answered your question about volunteering. A more specific question comes from Yusuf Khalid. We have strong funding in place and a strong appetite for a fantasy adventure film. Would you be interested in coming on during the packaging phase of production? And just in general, aside from the specificity, if somebody is working on a film and they want to present it to you guys, how would they go about reaching out to Watermelon Pictures and pitching?
Yeah, I would say thanks, Yusuf, and definitely open to. We respond to every email. So I put an email in the chat earlier, info@watermelonpictures.com. We'd love to see any and all pitches. We have a coverage team that goes through every script, every screener. So yeah, we'd love to look at it for sure, and we're definitely open to it.
And one thing I could just say that we always pride ourselves in is, we're just limited. We can't take on every project, whether it's financial or from a time standpoint. But what we always like to do is always give our own, feedback as from a distributor. We'll if we see something and we don't think it will work or why, we're very transparent. The we want nothing more to see everyone succeed. And I think just sometimes being honest, just to giving some advice on why something may or may not work from our perspective could be helpful, or especially in the early stages.
Definitely. And it's not the same as film, but I've reached out to a lot of news agencies whenever I want to write op-eds or whatnot. And what I've learned and I'd like to know if it's the same in film, is that what I've been told is that when you're pitching a story for an op-ed or a journal, you'll want to pitch and in the beginning just have a very clear and concise 1 or 2 sentences explaining it. That's very direct, and then you can kind of go into detail, but sometimes succinctness is best. How would you guys say you appreciate the pitches that you receive? What's the best formatting for that?
100% agree with you, Wally. And also, if nothing more, it kind of conveys, like, if there's like a nice deck, a nice presentation, if nothing more, it conveys to us that, it's serious. Because, we'll get a lot of just like email, like, here's my idea. And, again, it's not just like, we're not trying to sound exclusive or anything, but there are a lot coming through. And so, you definitely want to rise to the top by having a professional pitch. And I think, having something concise is great. And then, maybe, elaborating from there. But I think
it starts with like what you said, Wally, exactly. But we also want to see it built out. So if you have a nice log line or a concept, that's for the starting point. But then the further you have it developed into a possible treatment, a lookbook, stuff like that, that all helps. If you sell the log line, we just keep kind of going down. But if we get stuck at the log line, there's time in between, stuff get lost and whatnot.
Absolutely. And an anonymous attendee writes, what can the average person do to help Watermelon Pictures become more successful?
Yeah, so the first thing is obviously join Watermelon Plus. Please subscribe if you haven't. Constant content is being updated. Again, we're on the very early stages, but we do really believe in it, and we think it's going to have really wonderful, authentic content for people. We're also building out. It's very early on, but something called the Watermelon Collective, which is basically kind of like very similar to what Angel Studios does. And what they do is they're a Christian-based organization, but they have so many people who basically put in, a small monetary number per month, and then they actually get to vote on which projects are greenlit. So it's almost like a crowdsourced way of financing projects. I think they have over 5 million people, and if they're paying $10 a month, that's $50 million a month. And then there's quite a bit of projects that can be greenlit. So the idea is this model is not pressuring just 1 or 2 investors too much. It's really a community effort. Again, going back to even the studio levels, we're seeing like the first windows just getting completely, like your initial paywall window of Netflix or your big HBO sale. Those are kind of going away, and people are having a much more challenging time making their money back. So when we talk about sustainability, a model more like this is something that we believe could be more sustainable long term. And I think that we're reimagining what that may look like. We're still in the early stages, but we do feel confident about it.
Appreciate it. And I was just about to ask, and I see Hamza already put it in the chat. If you want to subscribe to Watermelon Plus, you can go to watch.watermelonpictures.com, and that's where you'll be able to subscribe and see all of the amazing content that they have there. Nice initiative with the collective, Ismail writes. So I agree, Ismail. That's great. Any final questions right now, guys? It would be a great time to toss them in the chat or in the Q&A. And I also have a personal question. Love your merch, the hats and the pins, Eva writes. Thanks, Eva. Yeah, I didn't check out your guys' merch yet, so I'm definitely gonna check it out. You mentioned previously, you've been using social media and whatnot. I'm on social media. I have a decent sized following. sometimes certain stories that I put out get, hundreds of thousands. Sometimes I have a video that goes really viral and gets millions of views. There are a lot of other creators who've also had their content go viral and get millions of views. And when I'm specifically talking about content that's focused on a specific story or something that's happened in history or a documentary or whatnot, have you leveraged any creators on social media and seeing what resonates with their audience as ideas, or do you look for things that are typically more developed?
Yeah, I guess I'd love to answer. That's a great question, Wally. I'm glad you asked. So the first thing that we notice is that, and this is that, we don't blame anybody, but promotional content actually performs far worse than value add content. So when we're trying to sell, the audience, the content, typically people see that, and typically and also I think even there's an algorithmic, issues there, where if you're trying to be promotional, content gets, suppressed, but also, the community doesn't want to be sold. So our best performing content is really more on the analysis side. How does this film relate to impact? How does this film relate to the current situation? And that's the content that's resonating the most. So people like you, Wally, that would be able to watch a film and then go into, essentially, why it's important, is actually the most resonant content. And just as an example, with the film To a Land Unknown that just released, it's very much about this perfect immigrant theory, that immigrants should have to be, morally and, socially flawless to deserve, social justice. And so the film does not depict, these two characters are very flawed. They're drug dealers. It's not an easy film, but they've kind of been forced into this impossible situation. And so, kind of breaking down, and actually, I think Muhammad Al-Kurd is a huge fan of the film. I think he said it was the best Palestinian film ever. It's an unapologetic thriller that just kind of rips to shreds this perfect immigrant theory. So that's the content and that's the content that's resonating. But we're also very cognizant that we're a film label, and to be tactical, we have to be cognizant of our tone. So it's great when somebody like you, Wally, comes in, watches the film, and gets highly political with it, so that we don't have to.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great to hear. I appreciate you answering that question. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to speak with us today, teach us a little bit about the film industry and your efforts and how you were able to use your expertise to connect it to the greater good. So I really appreciate that, guys. You're both doing incredible work. Thank you so much. And unless you guys have, do you have any final words you want to say before we conclude today's webinar?
Yeah, I guess first, any additional questions, please, info@watermelonpictures.com. It'll go through our team. It'll get to us. So please, if there's anything that comes to mind later on, or if there's any way you could see a potential collaboration, please, it would be our honor. We're truly honored to be on the show. And we really look at this as not just our movement. This is all of our movements together. And that's why I think it resonates with so many people. So we feel everyone has a part to play in this. And again, we're just honored to be able to speak to all of you.
Thank you, everybody, for attending. Thank you, Entrepreneurs for Palestine. Thank you, Eva. Thank you, Wally. Thank you, Sadia, Mariam, the whole team. Really appreciate the time and opportunity. And everybody, I don't have to tell this group, we all have to use our tools in our toolbox for change. And so honored to be here, and thanks again.
All right, cool. Thank you guys so much. We're going to conclude the webinar, and there will be a recording you can watch later that we'll be sending out as well. And you can see it on LinkedIn and some other platforms. So we'll be sharing that. Thank you guys so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, guys.
Thank you. You got it. Bye-bye.